Hello everybody and welcome back to another video by Funlearn Tutorials. In today's video I'm going to be talking about, so let me just write out what I want to do. How to write papers. So now it may sound weird. What are we dealing with? So sometimes in our academic institutions where we are studying, they ask us to use data, real life data, or they can ask us to use theories to write a paper, an academic paper on a topic. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about what are the main features that you need to put into a paper for it to be a good paper and you to get good marks in your submission. So how I usually start is, before I start with actually writing the paper, I actually write down the headings that I need to do, and that kind of takes up about a day, because in the first day we don't usually know what to start, how to write. So what I usually do is I open a Word document like this, I save it wherever I can. So for this purpose of this, I have saved it in my on my desktop, computer desktop. So what I do first is this page. Okay, let's check the page layout. So what I usually do is I write it in A4, so that makes it A4. Then I always use Times New Roman. This is my personal preference, and I have seen that most of the academic institutions that I am in, they always appreciate this. So I use Times New Roman, and based on the situation I switch between 10, 11, 12, max up to 14 based on what the situation is. And other than that, I follow 1.5 spacing. This again depends on the situation. I'll be going through all of these in details when I am doing the paper, and these are sort of the formattings that I usually do. So the first thing that I do is I tend to use this feature a lot. Let me just show this feature. Yeah, so there are, I think most of the versions of computer have this magnifying thing here. I tend to use this a lot, so I'll be telling you when and how I use this. So for first page, this is how I write the papers. Of course, this is not a universal guideline, but I've seen that I have this procedure has worked for me, and I haven't been discredited for it as far as I know. So I'm going to tell you how I write this. So my first page, I do not write anything. What I just put my details. So let's say I want to put my name, I want to put my roll number. So if you want to put your class roll number, university roll number, whatever you want to put. Other details, if you have registration numbers, identification, whatever important details you want to put, so that when the professor or the teacher is checking your paper, they know exactly whose paper they are checking. And sometimes if you want, you can write your subjects or subject codes, whatever you want. That is sort of the details section. Then what I do is I put some space and I write the topic name here. I just write topic name here and I leave some space. So what happens is you're leaving some space here, then you're writing the details, whatever details you want to put, name, class, section, roll number, identification, whatever you want to put, subject code, subject ID, your semester, year, whatever you want to put. Then you put a topic name, and usually these topics are for it takes 2 to 3 lines to write these, so I'm going to leave that much space. Then I write abstract. Again, I leave some space because I don't know what to write. I don't know the abstract, of course, so I again leave space. I write JAL classification. So JAL classification, the way I understand it is, economics papers, there are different subjects in which you can write the paper. There are different topics of writing the papers, and JAL classification has a code for classifying all the types of papers that you can have. So they have papers on microeconomics. Under economics, you can have papers on microeconomics, macroeconomics, money finance, econometric analysis. You can have different types, right? So if you go out on the internet, you will find JAL classification. Again, I'll make another separate video on how to decide on your JAL classification and how I use the website that I have found for JAL classification to understand what codes to use. So the codes that you put here, so there are like codes like C01 or C22. So sorry, what I usually do is here I switch off the block because there are just a couple of codes to be put, so I just put it in the same line, C11, C22, C32. So for example, so people who are very good in economics, probably not me, if they see these codes, they can understand at the first glance what this paper is on. They don't even need to know the topic name. This is ideally speaking. I'm not sure if that actually works or not, but I'm sure it works. So there are these codes that you need to put, and then what I do is I put keywords again in block. So I'm gonna turn on the blocks, and you can use capital letters, or these are based on you. It's not that you have to use all caps here as well. They are just your personal preferences. I just end up liking bolds a lot of the time, so I put keywords. And again, this is sort of like this as well, only this can be used by laymen. So if you are doing a particular topic on microeconomics, maybe you can use microeconomics, demand and supply, whatever word has been used a lot in your paper, you can use those words. And that will also probably help you determine the topic name and in abstract, in details. So that is sort of the first page that I follow. Next, what I do is the first page that I always write is introduction. So it's sort of what was my inspiration for this paper? Why did I take this topic all of a sudden? It's sort of like this part does not start with the analysis. There's no such theoretical analysis here. So when I write this part, the introduction part, I try to remember that I want to write it in a way such that somebody who does not understand anything about economics, or maybe 11th-12th level economics, they can understand this part, the introduction part at least. This part is not meant to give you any, in my papers, when I write papers, this part is like, so when you are writing a story, where is the inspiration? Some incident must have happened in your life and you were like, okay, I am following this incident and I am going to follow up from there and see where it leads me. So that is how I treat introduction as. So that takes my second page, and then and I leave the entire page blank because I don't know what I'm going to write first. So I'm going to leave this entire page blank, and I'm going to move over to the next page. For the next page, I usually do a literature review. A literature review is sort of, okay, so this is my inspiration. This has what led me to choose my topic, and I want to work from here on onwards. Now I want to see what has already been done in this sphere. So I go through a couple of papers. Again, you can use Google Scholar to basically, what you can do is, once you sort of understand what you want to do, you can just chuck in those words in Google Scholar and they'll give you papers if they are related with it. Once you start going through, just go through the titles, open them up, see if you have the papers or not, because sometimes Google Scholar doesn't have the paper, they just give you the paper name and that is it. So you have to open, see if you can use that paper or not, and keep a tally of it. So sometimes I also keep tally of what the literature, the papers that I have, and once I have sort of 4, 5, 6 papers ish on hand, I decide, okay, so I have sufficient resource if I want to go in this direction, and then I start a literature review. The literature review, I'll probably do another video on how I write literature review. Just disclaimer, this is all how I do it. I'm not sure if it's 100% foolproof, but these have worked for me. I don't think I have been discredited for my format. So these are how I write it. So I'll do a quick literature review. I have never done a literature review longer than 2 pages. So when I start, I just leave 1 page each. But as I keep extending, introduction never takes more than 1.5 pages. I don't think I have used 1.5 pages before. I've at most used 1 page. Literature review, I have used 2 pages sometimes. Then I do an objectives and motivation. So the difference between, so objectives is exactly what I want to find, and the difference between this motivation and this introduction, I said inspiration, right? The difference between this is where the story started. So I suppose I wanted I want to write a paper on consumption. I'll probably talk about what is consumption, where did it arise from, where if there's a particular part of consumption theory that I want to concentrate on, where did it arise from, why do I think that there's something missing in the theory. Basically, a paper is an attempt made by you to fill in the possible gaps in the existing theory. So why do you think there's a possible gap in the existing theory? That is what I put in my introduction. And then in objectives and motivation, it's sort of like, okay, I think there's a gap here and I want to fill in the gap. That is my objective, sort of also your motivation. You want to fill in that gap. Then I leave one page. It doesn't take one page at the end of the day. It takes about half a page or so, but I still leave one page just to keep track of everything that is going on. Then I again skip forward to the next page, and then I write data and methodology. So data and methodology. This part sort of deals with what data I'm using. It's just I think you don't put of course you can't put these in theoretical papers. So if you're doing econometric analysis, this part also comes in handy. So I write what data I'm using, where I've got it from, what are the dimensions. If it's a panel data, what are the years. If it's a cross-sectional data, what are the variables that I'm using. I define the variables. So for example, if you take the data from World Bank, they give you Excel files and they give you definitions of the data, the variables that you're using. So I put those in. I discuss the methodology that I'll be using. Why, if it's a time series, why, if it's a cross section, why, if it's a panel, why, if it's somewhere in between, why, just what I'm going to do. The data, the theoretical, the practical part of it, not the theoretical part of it. The next part is sort of the main body of the paper and the most scary part, of course. So I call it analysis and interpretation. Why do I call it this way? So what I'm doing is I have the data mentioned here. This part tells me the entirety of what my data deals with, and what I do here is I run some commands on the data. I run some exercises on the data. I regress them. If it's a cross-sectional data, I regress different types of data, multi-regressions, unit one variable regressions. If it's a time series, I run unit root tests. If it's panel, I run both. And so those are the analysis parts of it. So when I run those exercises, I get some results in numbers. So suppose in unit root tests, I get that there are 2 unit roots and it's an AR3 process, something like that. So those provide me outputs. In the same part of the paper, I write the interpretation. So if it's a unit root to unit root process, what does it mean in my context? So it's not stable, like it's not stationary, it's non-stationary. Why is it non-stationary? So does it not stabilize? Why does it not stabilize? Where does it stabilize? How does it stabilize? When does it stabilize? If it has 2 unit roots, that means it stabilizes when I'm taking 2 differences. Why does it stabilize when I'm taking 2 differences? So these are the possible interpretations of the output that I'm taking. So those fall under interpretations. This is the longest part of my paper always. I break it into several parts. So when I'm looking at a particular process, I write down those processes. And then it takes up the majority of the paper. So suppose I am leaving 1 page for it. So if I go to the next page, so if I go to the next page, so the next thing that I'll be mentioning is conclusion. So then I put in a conclusion. It sort of like wraps in everything together. So exactly what did I do, why did I do it, how I did it, and what are the results of what I did. So there's a conclusion. Again, this doesn't take more than half a page or at most 1 page if I am going through a difficult paper. And then what I do, I put a little bibliography. I think there's some space above it. Yes, there is. So I put a bibliography, and there you have it. You put the papers that you refer to. So in this section, the literature review part, go through the literature review part. I decide the papers that I loved and mentioned here, and I just mention the papers, like in this author in this year said this, and then in the same order, usually in the same order. It depends upon how I want to arrange it, but usually here I do it in the alphabetical order. So up above, probably I also do it in the alphabetical order. This part changes based on how I want to arrange it. Sometimes I go alphabetical order, sometimes I go by years. And I put the papers here in a particular reference style, maybe APA style or Harvard, depending upon the situation. These parts take a lot of time, but it's not difficult. These are actually the easier parts. They look the most difficult parts, but you don't need a lot of brain power for that. You just need patience for that. The most brain power gets used up in this section. So this is sort of how this is obviously the first day, so it keeps it getting changed. Sometimes introduction takes up a lot of space, sometimes literature review I cannot get anything and it ends up half a page, and then I keep it for 5 days and I realize I want to add in more to the topic. So suppose I started with only looking at consumption, and then I decide no, I want to look at consumption and investment, so then my literature review changes again. The thing is, usually abstract is the last thing that I write, and topic name is also kind of the last thing that I write. Then I first start with maybe data and methodology. Once I can understand what I'm going to start with, data and methodology is usually the first thing that I write. Then I write objectives and motivations. Then I start with analysis and interpretation, and once I know what I'm going to do, or once I'm at the fag end of it, I write the conclusion and I write the introduction. Yes, I write the introduction at the end, and then I write the abstract and the topic name. So that's sort of like the order in which I go. This is how I follow it. Again, I'm putting in disclaimers. I am not sure if it's like the foolproof way, but I haven't been discredited for anything that I have done as of yet, so I hope it helps and it makes writing papers a little bit more easy and a little bit more fun, because believe me, writing papers are fun. They are not very, they are interesting. They are a little bit of hard work, a little bit more hard work than just studying the subjects, but I believe they are a very, very interesting way of understanding what you're studying, and I hope it helps in writing your papers and making your life a little bit easier. Thank you.